what a weekend it has been. Metroid Dread is now out after 15 years of waiting since its unofficial rumored announcement. It's a real thing now, so that's still something to process. But welcome to this GameXplain review discussion here, and we are joined by two Europeans, one of which is the certified French CEO of Metroid in France, Glaedrax. How's it going, Glaedrax?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing great. And I guess the unofficial Metroid CEO of Norway, my good friend back from Commonwealth Realm, Konrad. How's it going, Konrad?
All good. It's been a very hectic week. OLED, Dread, of course. And I'm so ready to talk about the latter.
Oh, man. So am I. Like, okay. So, we have all beaten the game. I don't know if you came out with an official review of it, Glaedrax, but if you could give it a score, what would you give it?
It's difficult to give it a score. I'd say, like, not a number, but I'd say it's on par with Super Metroid.
It's on par with Super. Yeah, we don't even give number scores at GameXplain. So I gave it a loved it. The only score higher than a loved it at GameXplain is a mind blowing. I don't think the game really does anything mind blowing necessarily. It just does what it does best, and that is Metroid. Like I don't want to say Metroidvania because it's Metroid. Like this is the game that invented the genre, and it did it so perfectly. Konrad, you gave it a brutally honest review on your channel. What was your score?
Well, it was a 90.
Yes.
I just don't think it is exactly up there with the legends of the Metroid franchise. I just feel like they played a little bit safe at points, at least in the game. But I have to say that the high notes are really up there with the best. So a 90 score, I think, is completely fair and also brutally honest, because this is not a game for newcomers. This is a game that definitely tests you, challenges you, and it's a 2D Metroid. 2D Metroid are supposed to be challenging.
Yeah, I agree and disagree with what you're saying. It's not for newcomers. Gameplay-wise, it is totally for newcomers, I think, because it has the best controls out of any of the 2D Metroids by far. But story-wise, yeah, definitely not for newcomers. Like, you could still be a newcomer and play Metroid Dread, but the story will probably not have as much of an effect on you if you are a newcomer. And we're not going to get into spoilers here. We'll have a spoiler discussion later. But the story definitely rewards those longtime Metroid fans, like, full stop, because this is a sequel to Fusion. It's an end to the story arc with Samus and the Metroids, so that's already a big freaking deal right there. It just has so many, like, this could have been called Metroid Revelations, because there's so many revelations in it, you know? I do want to ask, starting this discussion off, is this, I already know your answer, Konrad, because you already gave the score, but do we think this is the best 2D Metroid or the best Metroid so far? Because there's been a lot of discussion online that this is the best 2D Metroid, and even I wanted to kind of refrain myself from giving that answer because recency bias is a thing. Let's be honest, like, when Super Mario Odyssey came out, for example, I pretty much thought this was the best 3D Mario. But as time went on, I'm kind of just like, is it though? So that's kind of where I'm at with Metroid Dread. But right now, I'm kind of thinking it is at least the best 2D Metroid. What do you think, Glaedrax?
I 100% agree. Yeah, it does so many things so well. Level design, character design, the art, the ambience, everything just works so well. Like, even some of the best Metroid games have that one thing which can kind of make people have different opinions. But I think Metroid Dread does put everyone on the same page. It's globally a very, very good experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's the best 2D Metroid and Metroid of all time, or do you think it's just the best 2D Metroid?
It's definitely my favorite. Is it the best though? Only time will tell.
Only time will tell,
because
right?
I think the biggest factor for that would be all the speedrun and sequence breaking stuff, which is very, very unique in Super Metroid. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But So far, it seems pretty good.
Yeah, and speaking of sequence breaking, I saw what you posted on Twitter the other day. Just like, I didn't know this, that the game really does keep sequence breaking in mind. Because if you collect the morph ball bombs before... Okay, I know I said no spoilers, but all you people should know by now that Kraid is in the game. People got so mad at my review saying there's spoilers in it, even though I didn't even show a third of the game in my review. But yeah, so if you collect the morph ball bombs before you get to Kraid, there is a morph ball slot that is activated with morph ball bombs, and it triggers a whole new cutscene. It's nuts. It's absolutely insane. But Konrad, I know I could tell by your review score you don't think it is like the best Metroid or even the best 2D Metroid. So defend yourself in this regard.
So personally, I would say it's all about the atmosphere and especially the ending of the games. All of the Metroid games have brilliant endings, but I still think Super Metroid takes the cake when it comes to the plot twist, the emotions. Like, obviously, Dread also hits those notes. I just don't feel it's as personal as it was in Super Metroid. And to me, the opening sequence of that game, the sequence breaking, which was also mentioned here, plus a number of iconic factors, like the whole Space Pirates ultimate showdown, because that's what pretty much Super Metroid is. It is the final showdown against the Space Pirates, and that's why I just think that it is a little bit above. Dread had a difficult job of coming off after Fusion, and had in many ways to reinvent Metroid a little bit, and I feel in one way it managed to do that. In the other, I think more could have been added. So yeah, that's my argument. And when it comes to Prime, I just think Prime is a better experience overall. Most of all, it's a much bigger experience, which I think also should not be forgotten in the context when counting the best games. Yes, it has the Chozo keys, which can be very annoying, but overall, I think Prime and Super Metroid are just better games than Dread.
Yeah, and that's not to say Dread isn't amazing. Of course, just to clarify with the viewers right now, everybody relax in the comments. But I definitely understand what you're saying, though, because I think the unfair advantage that Super Metroid will always have is when it came out. Because Super Metroid, when it came out, was such a revolutionary experience. It laid the groundwork for what Metroid was going to be, like, even more so than the first two Metroid games did. And it's and that's pretty much the Metroid game that really created, created the Metroidvania genre. And then Symphony of the Night came in, and then they came up with the word Metroidvania. So I get that, but the more I was thinking about it, and of course our answers, only time will tell, of course, if this is, of course, the best 2D Metroid. Right now I'm kind of thinking that it is, and that's mainly because of two reasons, or maybe just one reason, and that is the controls of this game. Man, in my original draft of the review, before it was edited, the first thing I talked about after the story was the controls, because I felt like those controls just stood out the minute you started playing. Like the second you started playing, the millisecond you started playing, they were just so tight, so precise, so smooth. Samus controlled like an absolute dream, to the point where I was just thinking, they should just remake every 2D Metroid game with this engine. Please do that. They're never going to do that, but I really feel like they should, because wow, the controls of this game are very smooth. It's
amazing. I think everyone will agree. It's definitely the best gameplay in the entire series. It's so fluid. There are so many movement options and stuff. It's definitely the most advanced gameplay in the series. Even though Super Metroid was pretty nice, it still shows its age a bit. I love Super Metroid, don't misunderstand me. I think it's one of the most well-crafted games of all times. But I don't know, man. The gameplay of Dread is just it's mind-blowing, really. It's really the best part of the game.
Would you agree, Konrad?
Oh yeah, the controls there's a night and day difference here, literally speaking. It's been updated for the modern age. It's a modern age Metroid game, and it really shows from the moment you are handed control in the game. which says a lot. Obviously, there's a big gap since the last game. It's been 19 years since Fusion, so there's been quite the evolution in the scheme of controllers. We now have dual analog camera controls, and since 2D Metroid was very much tied to D-pad experiences, that also limited the control options. So when you have a full analog stick, and even two of them, then you're going to have a far better control experience. But I still think Metroid Prime, especially on the Wii, where you had the full the motion controls there, I just don't think it can be beaten, especially the ones for Metroid Prime. I think in Metroid Prime 3 it got too gimmicky, but Metroid Prime, they just nailed it.
Yeah, Mercury Steam, they really just nailed the 2D movement of 2D Metroid. But I also was thinking about the bosses in this game, because there's another thing I do want to talk about, is the bosses. We're not going to really spoil too much when it comes to the bosses in terms of gameplay. I'll probably just show Corpius in the edit, which surprised me that I almost died like the first time, and I'm on like my fourth playthrough of the game. I started a fourth playthrough last night. Yes, I did. I'm nuts. But I actually died like maybe twice on his boss on hard mode, of course, because this game is challenging, and that's been a topic of conversation with Metroid Dread, is that the game is very hard, which is something I agree with and I disagree with at the same time, because when you start out, it is hard. But when you figure out patterns of the bosses and the enemies, it becomes almost a cakewalk, even in hard mode. What do you think about that, Konrad? Did you find this game to be... First of all, have you only played through the game once?
I played for it once, I didn't have time. I had way too much to edit, and...
Yeah. Busy guy over here.
Especially when you want to, get the whole storyline and footage of that and so on. But the thing is, yes, I think that the bosses are a step up. The main thing that stands out really is the presentation, because the introductions and outros to these bosses, they feel like 3D Metroid. You don't feel in the slightest as 2D Metroid. So especially the fights, pretty much every boss fight, I would say, has this introduction where you feel it's like 3D. Sometimes you see behind Samus' visor before the fight initiates, and I just feel like, this is the perfect blend. Maybe at one point we can have a blend of 2D and first-person Metroid, and maybe that could work. Who knows?
We already had it. It's called Other M. Anyway, so
yeah.
However that was, right? But yeah, in my opinion, but actually I do want to get your thoughts on that too, Glaedrax. Like the sort of difficulty. I feel like you played through it a few times, right? Haven't you?
Yes.
Just a few, just a little bit.
A little bit.
You can kind of agree with me though, right? Like when you start out, like it is a hard game. But the more you play, the way better you get at it. Like you can go entire bosses without dying, or even taking a hit for that matter, once you nail their patterns.
Yeah, definitely. Even the final boss as well. It's very challenging too, but once you get to know his pattern, it gets much easier, because the bosses and even the whole game is made in a way to feel like it's challenging, but it's never unfair at all, which could be the case in previous games. I'm looking at you, Yakuza from Metroid Fusion.
Exactly. Oh my god.
But yeah. I feel like it's much more mastered in the way it's created, the whole game, and especially the controls and bosses. Indeed, yeah.
It very much is. Like, I was surprised I was even able to beat hard mode in like 2 days, because it really is just about nailing the boss patterns and just figuring them out, because then you'll just become unstoppable at that point. Like, maybe not unstoppable. There will still be slip-ups, because there's easy to slip up in these bosses. My only complaint about the bosses is that it's only, like, not only, there's their visual designs aren't as impressive as the bosses in previous Metroid games, especially Super Metroid. Granted, maybe Super Metroid is just nostalgia for me, because, we had all those diverse enemies like Phantoon, Crocomire, all that, Kraid, of course, all that good stuff. But to me, the visual designs of the bosses looked kind of generic, I would say. I wouldn't say they really stood out to me, but what mattered most about these bosses were their attacks and how they basically changed them up. there's one boss where it's in the middle when you go back to Cataris. I'm not going to spoil it with visuals. That was just a standout boss. And the more I play it, the more I'm like, I love this boss. It's really good, especially when you counter their attacks. And it's just like an epic sci-fi movie in the middle. Like, what did you guys think about that, Konrad?
Yeah, I just feel like they nailed I wouldn't say the boss design, but when it comes to the gameplay design, oh, absolutely. They are challenging by all means, especially later on in the game. But that's the nature of Metroid, and I feel many of the complaints about the hard part of the game is that you're not willing to adapt. Metroid is all about adapting, about learning from your mistakes very often. That's why the games are not that long. It's supposed to be an experience where you fail, you encounter that failure and try to learn from that failure so you can overcome that obstacle in the next run. And that's what I feel Dread does really well. Not everyone is up to the task of doing this type of gameplay, and that's why, well, maybe they marketed to some people that maybe are not Metroid material, and I guess those are the people that are complaining about the difficulty.
Yeah, I can agree on that too. Yeah. It can be maybe a bit frustrating at times. Not too often, but I had like 2 specific parts where I felt frustrated. I won't say anything. I won't say any spoilers, but there was that one robot which felt very, very frustrating. I think we all know which one it is.
Yeah, the game is challenging, of course, and that caused a lot of conversation on Twitter. I don't really think people really complained about the difficulty from what I saw, but they really just acknowledged, wow, this is actually tough, and this is a Nintendo game. Like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Breath of the Wild was also a tough Nintendo game, but I think we can agree, like, for this past few years, since Breath of the Wild, most of the Nintendo games haven't been super duper challenging, but Metroid Dread is definitely, like, one of those things. And that's also the final thing I want to bring up in this discussion here is the public's reaction to this game. Now, before it came out, I'm going to be honest, I had very low expectations because I didn't want to get hurt again, right? It was just the fact that here's a 2D Metroid game coming out on the Switch for $60, and already there's people complaining it's a $60 Metroid game. Now, of course, we the people know, like, this is a game worth $60, especially now that we've played it, we can agree it's worth $60. But I was very interested in what the public's reaction was going to be, even in spite of all the successful sales pre-orders that this game has, and currently it's the best opening for a Metroid game in the UK right now, second only to Prime 3, which was, not second only, but Prime 3 being behind it now, which is interesting. I thought it'd be Prime 1, and now that I've been seeing on Twitter everybody just sharing how proud they are for getting this game, everybody talking about just how great it is, it's so surreal to be in this moment because I'm just so used to Metroid games being like released, maybe talked about for like a day or two, and then everyone moves on with their lives, and then it's low sales numbers. But here, this really is a Metroid Dread renaissance. Like, it's absolutely nuts. Glaedrax, you are the king of Metroid in France, so tell me how this feels to you.
It's really amazing. I wasn't expecting nearly as much excitement for the game. It's actually really mind-blowing. I spoke with so many people about the game just right after the announcement. My notifications were like nuts for a whole week. I was like, what? Like, I'm not the only Metroid fan on this planet? Turns out I wasn't. I really, really wasn't. And it's just amazing. I'm seeing so many of my friends and coworkers who never touched a Metroid game before getting Dread and playing it and loving it right now. It's just amazing. It's really amazing.
It is, isn't it? And Konrad, we've made videos on this topic in the past, especially you recently. Like, I was on your video too about how Metroid Dread needs to, like, save the franchise or something. Now tell us how it feels just to see that it looks like it's working. It's working, finally.
Yeah, I think Nintendo made a completely wise choice to dedicate this 35th anniversary and sacrificing Zelda's 35th anniversary in favor of Metroid. Because you could say the lineup so far this year has been kind of lackluster when it comes to first-party Nintendo games.
Totally.
And I think it's deliberate, because they wanted to put all focus and attention to that one big new game they have this year, which is Metroid Dread. And I think it really paid off, because the fact that you don't have distractions coming out next month or the month after that, and the closest we are is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is nearly 4 months away, which I think is, 3 months, but it's still far enough away that people will be thinking about Metroid throughout the holiday season. And I think that is the most important part. Because for Nintendo, this game has to sell. It has to sell. We have been talking about 3 million so many times before, for a number of reasons. But the fact that no Metroid game has done that before, and now you have the Switch, the best performing Nintendo system at this point of all time, I would say. It just shows that Metroid has to perform, and it looks like it will perform with Dread. And when they first get a taste of Metroid and like it, and especially with Prime in development and very likely looking like a 2023 game, I wouldn't be surprised that Nintendo does something similar as they did in 2021 for Prime in 2023. Say after Breath of the Wild 2 is out, after Splatoon, Kirby, and so on are out, then dedicate 2021 to Metroid once again, so that Prime 4 can sell even more than Metroid Dread.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. Like, all I'm saying is, hey, if you're a new Metroid player and you played Metroid Dread, man, wait until you see Prime 4. Like, if this is just a testament to how Nintendo is treating Metroid right now, not just like in marketing, but in like development wise, like they developed it alongside Mercury Steam. And if they keep that design philosophy going for Metroid Prime 4, I can't imagine what we're going to see that game be like. It's going to be absolutely wild. It's going to be nuts. Yes. Chef's kiss. My goodness. It's so much to handle. And you know, I do want to close this by saying that only Nintendo can do this. They can make a 2D game for make it a full price release and have people eat it up, like, without hesitation. And that's, like, something I was legit concerned about. Like, are people willing to pay this much money for a 2D game? Like, they did it for Tropical Freeze, of course, so there's no doubt they could do it for Metroid, and I don't think any other company could get away with something like that, because Nintendo, that's just a testament to how strong Nintendo's IP is. Even an IP that's not as, like Metroid, which is not as successful as Mario, not as successful as Zelda, not even as successful as Donkey Kong, can do that. It's nuts. Yeah, but this has been a review discussion here on GameXplain. Thank you all so much for watching. We will have that spoiler discussion later on this week for those who still need to catch up with us. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this discussion. Glaedrax,
thank you.
Tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Glaedrax, or you can also find me as the community manager of shinesparkers.net, also on Twitter as well.
Very nice. And Konrad, tell us where we can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Commonwealth Realm on YouTube, Twitter, and a number of other places as well. Just uploaded a Metroid timeline, which maybe might be good after you finish Metroid Dread, because obviously spoilers.
Heavy spoilers ahead. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and thank you, the viewers, for watching this discussion here on GameXplain. Be sure to check out the videos on the right for more topics that you might be interested in, and until next time, bye, Metroid Dread. But most of you have bought Metroid Dread anyway, so bye.